I'm Rachel.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome back to Capital Conversations with Rachel and Lauren.
This week we'll be talking about the life of a shutdown and answering all of your questions about our lives on the Hill.
Welcome back to day 13 of the government shutdown, and I feel like this is a story that we just know all too well. By this point, I feel like all of the details are the same. The last couple episodes we've done have been talking about, what a government shutdown is and breaking that down.
Yeah.
And then we had an episode where we talked about, an update of, there's no end in sight. And now I think people are really wondering is, what is the end going to look like? And what are people doing during the shutdown? Like, what is the life of a shutdown? I feel like a lot of people don't even know.
I mean, I didn't know until now. I think that obviously, as we've said multiple times, we said it on our On the Fly that we made last week, but the pressure sits in the upper chamber as the House remains home. And I mean, we saw back in March when Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer voted with the GOP to keep the government open. And so I think now, with this government shutdown, a lot of it does lie in the fate of Chuck Schumer because he kind of does hold all the power with that 60 vote threshold.
Yeah.
It gives him mass amounts of, I wouldn't say mass amounts, but it gives him negotiation tactics and ways to negotiate, and they're negotiating for an extension of those ACA tax credits. They want to repeal some of President Donald Trump's big beautiful bill. That's a far shot.
That's a stretch.
What they're
I don't
asking
think
with
that
the
they're gonna get
ACA
that.
tax credits is already a lot because they want an extension for much longer than Republicans want it. I think that even moderate Republicans are looking at about a year. Most Democrats are not wanting just a year extension these tax credits. So I really do think that this shutdown is, like I said, in the fate of Chuck Schumer right now. But also Republicans do control the House, the Senate, and they do hold the presidency. So this is really just a time of negotiation, but there's no negotiation table as of now.
No, there's no table. The negotiations are floating out there. They're on these clouds, but they have not landed. There is no table right now for them to come and sit at.
And they've literally just been floating since we started talking about this.
Since day one.
And
actually, even before day one. When the CR was being crafted, I think that what we were seeing is that Republicans were advocating this is clean, and we've talked about this, that this is clean. There's no policy riders. There's no GOP policy priorities that are in here. It's just clean. But then Democrats for a long time have been saying, no, there needs to be health care put into it. And so right now they're both just arguing over what to even bring to the table, that they can't even sit down and discuss anything. And because of that, I think tensions are rising.
Tensions are so high. The House is not even in session,
and people are upset. They're still beefing.
I feel like they're still fighting, even though they're not here.
They're in this great war. They quite literally are in this war right now, where they don't even know who actually I think they're fighting against. Because you've seen rank and file Republicans go up against the Democratic leader. You've seen rank and file Senate Democrats go up against the House Republican leader. It's everyone is getting upset. And one of the things that I think really came to a head last week is when Mike Lawler confronted Hakeem Jeffries outside the press conference. I was there. It was so crazy. We came out of the press conference and he was standing there holding this laminated piece of paper, which I was like, that is so performative, whatever. It was kind of funny. I thought it was funny.
I think it matches his reputation.
It matches his reputation. And you know what, for people who say that he, is all about the cameras, he does perform well for cameras. And some people just have that flair. They have that ability to go on camera.
He's in a swing district. His seat is very competitive. He does need to be in front of a camera.
Yeah, he definitely, he's a little bit of a showgirl, I think. I think that he just likes to, and you know what? Sometimes that's helpful. It's helpful to have some of those members. I know some people think that members who are all performative, don't do any work. Yeah. But I think Mike Lawler had a good point when he came forward and he brought the bill physically. He was like, this is a one-pager of the bill. It's pretty easy. It extends the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies for a year. Your members are on it, you could sign it. And so he just kind of stood there, and then I think somebody gave Jeffries a head up. At one point, some girl came out and got scared because all of the reporters were like this, and she was and just ran inside. I think he had a heads up because he walked out and immediately, I think all of his Brooklyn, New York people would be, it was so New York. It was just
so
hey,
New
dude.
York. Both of them are from New York. Let's preface that.
Yes, they're both from New York.
It's a Republican and a Democrat from New York.
New York energy. And he was like, hey, where's your boss, Donald Trump? It was honestly just, there is actually probably some reporter out there who has a film of me laughing at that. And so if you have that, delete it. Because it was funny. It was funny to watch. But then as it kept going, you kind of started to realize that Like, this is where we're at now. We are at a point where members are yelling at each other in the hallways instead of having a decent conversation.
Yeah.
And so, for about maybe 3 minutes or so, I had a video that kind of just blew up because I had a great just interaction of the two of them literally yipping at each other like dogs, like little chihuahuas, just literally yipping at each other. And no one won. I think in my professional, nonpartisan opinion, I don't think anyone won.
Totally agreed.
And I don't think that the goal was to win.
No.
There was no way that Mike Lawler showed up and was like, I'm going to get him to sign. There was no way that Hakeem Jeffries was going to, sign it. Or like bully Mike Lawler into being like, you know what, I should be a Democrat now. Like, just like these outrageous ideas. I think that nobody won. Nobody was planning to win. But I think that the fact that they are all so up on each other is kind of crazy. And we saw that with then, on the kind of the flip side, we saw that with Speaker Johnson and the Democratic senators as well.
That was crazy.
I think it was interesting because I ended up getting to that gaggle late, so I got there at the end.
I think the location of it was really interesting.
The locations was crazy, and it was like right outside of Speaker Johnson's office, so the senators knew what they were doing. They knew that this was giving them a great backdrop, that they were here advocating for the government and advocating for Adelita Grijalva to be sworn in behind the Speaker's office where he was sitting and not swearing her in. It was very performative.
Yes.
And I think that it's just kind of like romantic and cute that they all just are living in their heads rent-free together. Like, I think it's just so kind of funny. But then again, that kind of comes back to that thing of like, this is kind of the problem that I think a lot of voters have with Washington right now, is that it's become just a showboat of people yelling and screaming. And like we said, there's no negotiations happening. So while they're doing all this yapping, where are the negotiations?
I mean, totally. I think that both sides are sitting there trying to rage bait each other. We saw it with Lawler and Jeffries. We saw Jeffries come in and kind of point out that Trump is like their father figure there.
Literally.
And like they're just kind of going back and forth. And I do think that the American people are seeing that. I think that it's more apparent now with this shutdown than it has ever been with how much social media is around and how much new media is just like able to show this, whereas a typical broadcast network can show bits and pieces of these interactions, but it's not the same as like your video that went viral on X.
And it goes to show that is why reporting, and we've talked about this numerous times, that reporting on X has become so explosive because your first instinct is to put your story or your clip on X or Twitter or whatever. And when you do that, it is easier for us as journalists with our cell phones running around to do it instead of a C-SPAN or a broadcaster who has to set up their big camera and like it's almost planned. Like the press conference is happening. But this was something where, Mike Lawler was just walking around the Capitol waiting for Jeffries to come out. And like that was something that was so spontaneous. And a couple of us were even like, hey, like what are you doing here? Like super just off the record, just like, hey, like how's it going?
He's just like waiting in the wings.
And he literally asked the reporter, he was like, where do they come out of? And the second he said that, I was like, oh, so we're going to have a demonstration. I was like, I should be prepared for this. So, because I was just going to go upstairs. And then I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to stick around for it. And I think that was kind of the same thing that happened with, I guess it was a little bit different with the senators because they had this presser gaggle. I don't know if it was pre-planned, but like a lot of people were waiting outside Jeffrey's office anyway, or Johnson's office, sorry. And they know that, reporters always stand there. If you travel to the Capitol, for people who have been to D.C. before and you walk through and they're like, oh, and on this side is the Speaker's office, you will see a bunch of people like this just typing.
Whenever the tour guides like pan to us with their tour and they're like, and here's the reporters, I feel like I'm a zoo animal.
No, I feel like I'm a wax figure, like animatronic at Disney World.
Every time I'm like,
no, really, and I'm like, hi. One time I'll have like, middle schoolers trying to rage bait me, being like, can you take a photo of us, make a story about this? And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, you guys remind me of my sibling. That's so funny. But yeah, it's just like, it's kind of interesting. But I think that the difference between the Lawler and the Jeffries argument and the argument between Johnson and the senators were that the senators had a big problem that's actually a pretty relevant topic right now, is that they want Rep-elect Grijalva sworn in. And we've talked about this before, that she's not being sworn in. Johnson has said it's because the House is out of session. Democrats don't really like that answer. And so I think that was something that actually I think was more of a dialogue as opposed to Jeffries and Lawler just yipping at each other. That one was more respectful for sure. It got tense. I will say it was tense when you listen back to it. But, and that's expected when you have two people of the opposite party.
And I do think that people from Arizona, so those were the two senators from Arizona, we had Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego. I think that people in Arizona are growing frustrated. They had this special election now weeks ago that they want their members sworn in. With the House margins being so small, like regardless if they're in or out of session, this is a big deal. Like we've talked about, I feel like a million times now on this show, is the Epstein discharge petition that Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna
Which
introduced.
is not going away, even during the shutdown. It's that little layer.
Exactly. So a discharge petition, like we've talked about, is a tool that typically the minority uses to get, if they get 218 signatures, which is the majority in the House, then they can force leadership to put a bill on the floor. They have a bill that essentially forces the full release of all of the Epstein files with survivors' names redacted. They added that in when they were kind of first introducing the bill.
Right.
But they're one signature shy of this discharge petition becoming ripe, which it can't become ripe until they are in session. But Adelita Grijalva will be that 218th signature the second that she's sworn in. With them being out of session, they can swear her in what is called a pro forma session.
Yeah.
Which is, how would you describe a pro forma session?
I would say a pro forma session.
Procedural.
It's procedural. It's basically they come in and they go, you know, we are gathering here. Is there any business? Typically, this is a majority platform because if someone from the majority, you know, majority sits in the speaker's chair.
Yes.
So if the majority, someone in there has business to bring forward, they can come and speak. And sometimes we've seen them recognize minorities, like like the minority side of the Congress. But what happens is that right now the speaker, whoever sits there, is a Republican. He is seeing the Democrats come to the floor, sometimes screaming. Last week we saw them screaming a lot. The week before we saw them screaming a lot. And he or she will just gavel out and not even recognize them. And we had some Democrats shouting at them the other day, being like, this is undemocratic, you need to answer us. But it is a situation in which, you know, Republicans do control the House, so they can gavel in and gavel out whenever they want to.
And I mean, I do think that obviously we have the Epstein investigation in oversight. I think that all of this is really fluid and works hand in hand, and I do think they're kind of trying to keep that a little bit separate. I think they're trying to give House oversight the space to do their investigation. But I mean, as of right now, the ongoing investigation is kind of, I don't want to say at a halt. It is actively happening. We are actively getting more files. We're getting more files from the Epstein estate. We got Bill Barr's interview, that transcript. I read that one a while back. We talked about that last week. Hillary Clinton was supposed to appear for her deposition. Her lawyers said that they're going to reschedule for scheduling conflicts with the committee. But essentially her and former President Bill Clinton are supposed to come in and testify on anything and everything that they know about Jeffrey Epstein. And I mean, Hillary has less run-ins with him. There are actually really no evidence that the two were ever seen together, Hillary and Jeffrey Epstein. But there are overlaps with Ghislaine Maxwell and Hillary, or family members of Ghislaine Maxwell. There was a nephew that worked under Hillary and her when she was Secretary of State that was kind of during all of that. We saw Ghislaine at Chelsea Clinton's wedding.
Interesting.
We saw Ghislaine at a Clinton Foundation event just a few years after sexual abuse allegations had come out.
That's
after
crazy.
Some of Clinton's staff had taken her off of any list that she should be at any events.
Wow.
And so this deposition was postponed as the Supreme Court ruled last week that they were not going to hear her case to appeal any part of her sentence, her 20-year sentence, which she was sentenced a few years back, which was big news because now the only way that she could get out of this 20-year sentence is if the White House pardons her.
And I just think that the Epstein files are so crazy because, like you said, like Maxwell or family of hers was seen with the Clintons and vice versa, that I think it kind of shows that the Epstein files really just digs into the roots. It's like this big tree and it digs right down to the roots and it spreads out to everyone.
So
there
wild.
are a lot of people that could be canceled from this.
Seriously.
And you don't know who it's going to be.
The thing is that's crazy though is I feel like cancel culture is so prevalent right now, but we haven't seen any of those people get canceled.
No, like anyone
to
who
be
could
honest,
yeah, to be like, and we've seen. I mean, like, you know, Bill Clinton had his share of controversies. You know, Hillary Clinton had her own share of controversies.
Trump has his
is
own.
a walking controversy, as a lot of people, you know, accuse him and take pride in. Like, I think it is just. It will be interesting that when these files come out, because you know, when Grijalva signs, she'll be the 218. Thomas Massey, is not Mike Johnson's friend.
No.
So there is no shot of Massey backing down, as we've seen some Republicans withdraw their discharge petitions for an exchange on other votes or an exchange for a program or whatnot. Even when we have things happening with the shutdown where the House isn't working, the Senate is in a stalemate, the show goes on. And I think that we saw that a lot, not only with the Epstein files, but we're seeing that in elections. Because as we talked about so much, we have our current lives right now.
Yeah.
But then we are always thinking forward to November 2025. We're thinking forward to November 2026.
Yes.
And we're seeing right now a lot of people during this shutdown are taking advantage of it campaign-wise.
Yeah.
And we saw news out of Texas, which are Miss Texas Girl. Why don't you share with the viewers and listeners what's happening in Texas?
Yeah, so I mean, we have been waiting for this. Congressman Wesley Hunt, he is a House Republican in Texas right now. He launched his bid for Republican
That one was a
Senate,
long time coming.
Which it was a long time coming. He's been having some chats with the White House. I've heard about his campaign video being filmed a few weeks back. Like, I've been waiting for this, but we've talked about this. This is already a crowded race on both sides. We have Colin Allred, former Democratic House member, who was also the Democratic Senate nominee last time, running against James Talrico, who massively outraised him in the first 3 weeks. Massively outraised almost anyone we've seen in a while.
Yeah, he's a very impressive candidate. I think from either side, both people would agree that
I've had Republicans text me and be like, his fundraising is phenomenal.
And they like his, speaking style. And I think a lot of people say that. And like Wesley Hunt, I feel like is somebody who kind of was on the back burner. He's not someone that's super flashy in the media. We don't really hear a lot of controversy about him. But I feel like whenever we speak to him in the halls of Congress, he's very conversational. He's able to speak to people. I think that could be welcome in a race where it's two, overlords fighting each other. And I think the thing that is maybe a ease to House Republicans, because Wesley Hunt is a House Republican, is him leaving is not really going to make that much of a difference because his district is pretty red in Texas. They won't have to worry too much about holding on to that seat. They're entering 2026. If all of the special elections go the way that they're projected to, they are expected to enter 2026 with a 2-seat margin. They currently have it right now because of Democrats that have been elected. We just had a primary in Tennessee for retired member Mark Green. We saw a Republican and a Democrat selected for that, general race. If the Republican wins, Matt Van Epps, if he wins, he will end up bumping up that majority to 2 seats because prior to that, there will be one in November in Texas, actually, to fill the seat of Sylvester Turner. And so, if a Democrat wins Turner's seat, it will just be a 1-seat majority.
Yeah.
So for about a month, we'll probably see a 1-seat majority. Once the likely Van Epps ends up winning the generation and comes to Washington, then we'll see it bump back up to 2.
I think that these November and December special elections, the margins will show how much the government shutdown affected one side or the other, or who's messaging it better, especially because they'll be so close to the shutdown that if those margins grow or shrink one way or the other, I do think that it's going to be indicative of who kind of won that government shutdown messaging fight.
We are joined by Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to be with you.
And there's obviously a lot going on in Washington, and the biggest news right now is the government shutdown. We are on day 10 of this shutdown, or day 9. How is the GOP feeling right now? How are you feeling?
Well, I'm actually very concerned. I'm concerned that Democrats in the Senate would put their politics ahead of the American people, and a lot of people are about to start getting hurt. So, no, we don't feel good about this at all. The only thing we could say in the House is we did our job. September 19th, we passed a clean continuing resolution that would fund the government through November 21st. And we did that, Rachel, because the move here has been to get back to a regular order appropriations process. The appropriations process around here has been broken for years, decades. Literally, instead of doing the appropriations process, it always ends up where you have this huge Christmas tree bill called an omnibus bill several months later, where everybody's hanging their ornaments off of it, and guess what? Everybody that's involved in the bill gets something they want, but the American people get a whole bunch of stuff they not only don't need, but we can't afford. So we're trying to get back to that regular appropriations process. The House and the Senate had both made motions, and I think it was the second week of September, to go to conference on the first three appropriations bills. That hadn't happened since 2018. So the negotiations were already taking place. They were getting ready to close those three up. They told us they needed a little bit more time to close those three up. Then they thought they could quickly get to the next three and hopefully get to a full year funding bill before that November 21st date. We did it well in advance of the September 30th midnight deadline, and then Chuck Schumer and Democrats in the Senate, where, because of the rules of the Senate, you have to get 60 votes to actually bring it to the floor and pass it. So we need 7 Democrats at a minimum. That's if we have all Republicans. They're not willing to give us those votes right now, and they'd rather, according to Chuck Schumer, every day gets better for him. They can't end the shutdown because then they lose their leverage. One of his members said, it's not just about suffering, it's about making a point. The point is they're trying to appease the terrorist wing of their party, a group which, by the way, is going to have a Hate America rally here on the 18th. So there's a rumor that's going around that may not be so much a rumor as it is true, that they have to wait until after the Hate America rally because they're more afraid of the Hate America rally than they are of hurting the American people. So whatever it is, we don't feel good about what's happening. We can feel good about the fact that Republicans in the House did our job.
And one of the things that has been kind of a sticking point that's kind of crept up in the last week has been military pay for troops. Speaker Johnson and a lot of members of leadership, you yourself, have said that the CR was funding the troops, so we don't need to put a standalone bill on the floor. Some of your own members have been advocating for this. They want a standalone bill. Why not put that bill on the floor? I understand that it's in the CR, and then if everyone voted for it, then military would be paid. But if a lot of people from your conference are asking for this bill, why not put it on the floor?
Rachel, what's that going to change? I mean, then what's the next single issue bill that they're going to say, oh, let's do this one? I respect all of our members that are fighting so hard for our troops every day. They already voted to pay our troops. Earlier this week, 70-some Democrats, including Angie Craig from my home state, sent a letter to the Speaker urging him to bring everyone back to vote on a pay the troops bill. Angie, you voted no. On September 19th, you had an opportunity to pay the troops. You said no. There is no reason when they've all voted against funding our troops, paying our military families, to call them back and now they can be for it after they were against it. Tell them that they need to call their senator. I would tell Angie Craig, call our 2 senators and tell them to bail you out by passing the clean CR in the Senate. Stop this horsing around, protect people instead of your own politics, and it'll all be done.
And have you personally spoken to the 2 senators from your state? Have you encouraged them to vote for the CR? And what, if any, has response that you've gotten from them?
Sent both of them a letter earlier this week, imploring them to please vote for the clean CR and laying out how people were going to get hurt. And I've been talking to Tina Smith indirectly because Tina Smith made some comment at home that she is just doing this to protect Minnesotans' health care, which is an outright lie. It's not even strong enough to say she's being disingenuous. She is lying. And no one in my state seems to want to hold her accountable for the fact that what she's holding them hostage for? She wants $1.5 trillion more in spending. She wants to use some of that new spending to put illegals back on taxpayer-funded health care, something that we tightened up and eliminated back in July. She also wants to gut the $50 billion rural health care fund that Republicans created with the bill on July 4th. So how is that about health care? So yes, I have been talking to her indirectly through people like you, Rachel, telling her she needs to fess up. Come on. Don't be making misstatements. Don't be trying to mislead. Just do the right thing. Be responsible. Vote for the clean CR and let's get people back to work.
And this has been kind of a big messaging battle, I think, since the shutdown has started. Republicans and Democrats are loud at the microphones trying to tell people, Democrats are saying this is a lie, Republicans are saying this is a lie. Are you concerned at all that a lot of this messaging is just kind of going out into the void and no one's really understanding what's going on here in Washington? And how are you trying to reach those voters who may just be hearing a lot of noise and don't even know what's true and what's not?
Rachel, that is the fourth establishment's job. It's not mine. I'm telling you the truth. And by the way, you don't have to take my words. You can go read their alternative proposal that is in writing filed in the Senate. It's all in there, what I just said to you. The press needs to do a better job when Hakeem Jeffrey is saying, just standing up there saying, Republicans are shutting the government down. Republicans are responsible for this. The press needs to turn around and say, but Hakeem, all you need are 7 votes in the Senate and it would pass the Senate, wouldn't it? A clean CR, and that would end the whole thing. But I think the press, not you, present company excluded, I think a lot of people in the press like a good car accident. So they aren't holding them accountable. That's why I pointed out my senators at home. Do you think I have a local print news media that actually will report what's going on? No. They'd rather report it that way. Well, they say it's a lie. They say it's a lie. Look, I've just given you. Go look it up. I think the speaker brings it up all the time. It's page 57. If you want to see how they're putting illegals back on taxpayer-funded health care. By the way, Maxine Waters said that's exactly what this is all about. So why the press is not holding them accountable for their lies, when I'm telling you, you don't even have to listen to my words. You can go read their own stuff that's in writing to confirm what it is I'm telling you. I think we need more of that. And I think the American people are a lot smarter than the political elites and a lot of these left-wing media outlets give them credit for.
And so right now, obviously, the House has been in recess since you guys passed the CR. And some Republicans have said that, we should come back to work, we should come back and hold hearings and move forward the appropriations process because the CR goes until November 21st. And the longer the shutdown goes, obviously, the quicker we get to that deadline. Do you think that there's going to become a point here soon where the House will need to come back even when we're still in a shutdown? Do you think that it's gone on long enough for Republicans being at home? And when do you think that that would be the appropriate time to bring them back?
You can't do anything while the government is shut down. Sure, you can have conversations, but you can do those now. You can pick up the phone and talk to anybody. You can use Zoom. That work can continue, but it's all verbal because there's nothing open where you can actually start to legislate and do the job that you ultimately have to do. No, I think Republicans right now have done their job in the House, and I think it's imperative that as long as Democrats in the Senate want to put politics ahead of the American people and put all of these people at risk, their livelihoods, their families, they're going to have to figure out how to pay the mortgage and put food on the table. They don't seem to care about that. Our people do. And our people are at home in their districts all across the country trying to work with our constituents that are being harmed by this less than responsible behavior in the Senate and try to help them make sure that the power company doesn't turn their lights off because the bill hasn't been paid. Make sure that the local credit union or the local bank that they have a car loan through isn't collecting interest during the shutdown, especially for our heroes, for our warriors. The junior enlisted I worry about probably the most, but everybody that's being harmed, our job is to try and help them weather this as best as we can until Democrats decide they're going to put Americans first again.
What is your opinion of when you think the government is going to open? Are you expecting it to be next week? Are you expecting it to go, the last longest shutdown was 35 days. Do you expect it to go that long?
Last Tuesday
is when you hoped it would be open.
It should have opened last Tuesday. You made whatever stupid point you're trying to make for your leftist terrorist wing. This Hate America group that is going to be here on the 18th, you've already shown them.
That's the No Kings rally or something, right?
It's the Hate America rally. They can call it whatever they want, but you will see when they're here that they will be carrying, if they got an American flag, it's probably because they're going to want to burn it, all right? These are people who hate America. That's who they are. That's the rally they're going to be having on the 18th. And they want to call it things that somehow masks what it is. This is what they're coming here for, and this is what Chuck Schumer and Democrats are scared of. You know, leadership is not leading people to where they already are. It's leading them to where they need to be. Chuck needs to suck it up and be a leader, and he needs to point out this is not good for the American people. We've passed a clean CR. You got to pass it over in the Senate, and let's get back to the table and do the negotiations to close this deal and hopefully get a funding deal through the end of next September.
And so looking ahead, which seems kind of crazy right now because we're still in a shutdown, but when the shutdown hopefully ends soon, we are going to see Rep. Adelita Grijalva get sworn in. The Speaker has said he will do that when session is back in. And she has already said that she's going to be the 218th signature on this discharge petition for the Epstein files. And I guess, are you prepared for that petition? Is leadership prepared for that petition to become active? And what kind of is the strategy that you guys are anticipating to respond to with this?
Non-issue. Non-issue. Whatever happens, happens. That is not the most important thing to Americans today. Right now, today, the most important thing to them is, how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay the car loan? How am I going to pay my utility bill? That's what's front and center. This is more of the National Enquirer stuff that people want to talk about. As far as I'm concerned, it's really a non-issue. Whatever will be, will be.
And so a lot of the conservative base have really wanted these files, and a lot of leadership has pointed to the work that the House Oversight Committee is doing, saying that's already been happening. You have people like Representative Thomas Massey who are saying, no, we need the files now, with names redacted, et cetera, now, permanently. Will you be, if that bill, the petition comes active, will you be whipping against the bill, or will you let members kind of vote their conscience?
We don't whip privilege motions. We never have. That's not something we do. We whip legislation that the Speaker has deemed something we're trying to get across the House floor. So, no, we won't be whipping anything like that.
And back a little bit whiles ago, when Representative Anna Paulina Luna, she had a discharge petition for proxy voting for new parents. And that was something that was going to come to the floor, and a lot of the Freedom Caucus and Fiscal Hawks didn't really want to see that bill come to the floor for a vote. And Speaker Johnson and Anna Paulina Luna were able to work out some sort of, not deal, but a way to move forward without bringing that petition to the floor. Do you see Representative Massey being as amenable to that as potentially Rep. Luna was? I know that Massey and leadership don't always get along, but I was curious if you think that there's a pathway to potentially prevent this bill from coming to the floor.
We always get along with Thomas. We may not agree on certain things, but no, I've never had a problem with Thomas telling me where he's at or what it is that he's trying to accomplish and what he needs help with and what he doesn't want. He's always very clear on that stuff. This one, you'd have to tell me what the suggestion would be. It doesn't matter to me. It becomes active or ripe, whatever they call it, when we come back. We'll deal with it, we'll move on. We have to do the business of the American people. And by the way, we all want to see these things released, but we want to make sure that when they're released, you're not unnecessarily harming victims. You're not harming people who are innocent. You got to make sure. That's the reason we have a legal process for this stuff. And just as a lawyer, I want to make sure that people are protected at the same time. I think all of it should be exposed to the extent that it doesn't harm victims or innocents.
And so now shifting gears a little bit more, is that obviously appropriations is going to be the big thing. That's what this whole shutdown thing is kind of about. And while you're also going to be working on appropriations, the Speaker said today in a press call that they're already kind of looking forward to reconciliation 2.0 and even 3.0 this fall. For you, what would you want to see in this next reconciliation bill? Have those talks started? And do you think it's going to be easier or harder to pass than the last one?
Remember, Rachel, I'm the whip. My job is not to tell you, oh, I want to see this, that, or the other thing. That is the Speaker, his job, and the majority leader who will be working with committee chairs, and it will be our members who are funneling all the information up. Once that is, if that comes to pass, then it'll be our job to make sure we've been working with every single member about the things that they want, about the concerns that they have, about what they can do, what they can't do. That's the job of the whip, is to make sure that everybody, no matter what their point of view is, has an opportunity to participate, is heard, and then hopefully can be part of the team.
And in general, what do you think is the most difficult part of being the whip?
I actually love the job. I tell people this is the best coaching job anybody's ever given me. You got to know all of your players, everybody on the bench. You got to know their strengths, their weaknesses. And literally you got to help them go to where it is they're trying to get to. And it's there's nothing difficult about communication and honesty. I think that's been the most fun thing that I've had is I can be rather blunt. And members seem to appreciate it because they don't want all the drama. They don't want to be guessing where they're at or what they need to do. They just want to know what the facts are. So, no, this is a great job.
And then my last question is, you have said that we need 7 Democrats on the Senate side to open up the government.
I said at least.
At least. We'll see. And you're hoping that your 2 Minnesota senators will be on there. How confident are you that you think that enough of those Democrats can flip, and what do you think is going to be enough to get them to flip and vote yes?
I think there's Democrats over there that know this is a huge mistake. They are falling in line with their misguided leader, who's doing this primarily just to keep his leadership position and because he's afraid of his future. By the way, the speaker told me that Chuck Schumer's been here for 44 years, and he said, you realize the speaker was in the 3rd grade when he started. It may be time for some fresh, new perspective in the Senate anyway, but I think you're going to have enough senators at some point soon say, look, this is not good for the American people, and I'm not going to play with this any longer. I'm going to break.
Thank you.
You bet.
Welcome to our Q&A section, our favorite part where we get to answer questions from viewers and listeners. And there are a couple that are on deck that we're excited to answer.
Yeah, we have a question from PoliScience 2022, and it's, how do you predict the shutdown will end?
Well, I don't know. I think, here, I'll go with my prediction. You can put yours in as well. My prediction is that it will stay shut down until the end of next week.
At least.
And so by that point, you'd put us at what, 23 days-ish?
They're already restless.
I think that we will see it get closer to the 20, 25, 30 mark than we will see it ending, tomorrow. Because
totally agree with that.
I think that, as we've said before, the House loves to break records. And as we said earlier, there is no table even to negotiate at. No one has built it. No one has supplied the chairs. Like literally there's nowhere that these people can go to because they are just so on completely separate sides of this issue. And what I think is going to be the turning factor is the fact that in a few days, or already has happened, people will not be getting their paychecks. That will be government workers. It will be military. It will be other programs that had funding since October 1st. Congressional staffers on the Hill. And
that are working to reopen the government while not getting paychecks.
They're not getting paid. And I've had a lot of them reach out to me being like, the shutdown was kind of a joke and like a bit, and now it's real. Now it's the fact that it's going to be affecting us. And I think a lot of voters are going to start feeling it in real time. And I think that's when we're going to start to see when polls matter. I think that right now polling, in my opinion, does not really matter because a lot of people they're afraid of what's going to happen. In the next few days and weeks, we're going to see what actually is happening because of this shutdown.
And we are starting to see it now.
Already. And I think that that's going to put pressure on Mike Johnson to open the House. Trump to step in, and Chuck Schumer to do what he did in March, which is vote for the CR. So I think those 3 people are in this little trifecta.
Yes.
And it's going to be very interesting to see kind of who comes out on top.
And I mean, Trump does not like when his approval ratings start to dip. So that would be interesting to see if he budges it all from that. I'm going to go off a little bit of what you said. I completely agree with the 25 to 30 day mark. But once you start to get into, I know that we've talked about this, Congress loves to break records, but once you get into that 35 day record breaking mark, that is the November elections that have 2 major governor races.
Yeah.
And so if they are polling poorly and the government stays shut down through those early November gubernatorial elections, I honestly, I can't even, we haven't worked through a shutdown, so I don't think we can accurately depict at all how that is going to affect those. But I mean, that would be fascinating to see if the government stays shut down through those two major elections coming up in less than a month.
And as we said earlier, the CR is only until November 21st. So if you get into November, that's 20 days. After the election, that's less than 20 days, 16.
And then what, you're going to ask Democrats to vote for another CR?
Yeah, like that just seems to be interesting to me that, and I think that where Democrats could break through on this messaging here, because they're getting hit with a lot of like, well, you're the votes that are holding it up. I think where they could break through is when it does get into late October and to early November, when they're wanting us to pass a CR that's going to be over in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So why would we vote for something? Why can't we, you're going to have to do something else, basically. And all during that time, they can argue there was not one appropriations hearing, there was not a markup, and I'm sure stuff is happening behind closed doors. We've had staffers tell us that they're working hard to be ready to go when the government is open on day one. But as you inch closer, I just don't think that there's going to be enough time. And what is, though, funny for Republicans, and I think that they could message really well on this, is that Democrats keep asking for a vote on their CR. But their CR only goes until October, end of October, sometime in October. They're not going to be able to have that proposal be valid anymore either. So I just think that both sides are going to be really putting themselves in the crosshairs as we get on through the end of the month.
I mean, let's just knock on wood that our predictions aren't too far off.
No, literally. I would love for them to say, tomorrow it's over, and then we can all celebrate. I don't think that's possible. But there's other things that are going on, too, on TV. I think a lot of people are wondering what's going on separately with the National Guard. That was something that was kind of happening that was a big deal, and then it was, especially in Washington, it was a big deal to us, and then it kind of went away, and now it's popping up in blue cities. So we have a very apt question from Caroline, which is, what is the reaction to the Stephen Miller slip-up on TV? And if you don't know what that was, I didn't either until I read this question, because I've been dealing with the shutdown. But we want to bring you guys a variety of news. But she's chronically online, as I am not, as we've all probably gathered. So why don't you talk a little bit about what was this slip-up, and what do you think that this means for everybody?
I mean, Stephen Miller is a very prominent figure in Trump's world in the White House. He was on TV, and he pretty much said that in relation to the National Guard, that Trump had plenary authority, which means absolute. So like all power over the military, which after that, he pretty much pretended to glitch.
That's like the rumor.
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue.
Which, that was crazy. That was so insane to look up, because I was like, I didn't even know that this was happening until we got this question. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's real. Like, this is not an SNL skit. And I think the fact that Stephen Miller put that out there was very oddly timed, because then last week also, Speaker Mike Johnson went on C-SPAN. He was the first speaker to do so in like 20 years to accept
That was wild.
callers.
I will give him credit for that. As reporters go on C-SPAN and they get these calls, essentially anyone can call in and they can ask you any question.
Any question. And they have different lines. They have Republican lines, they have Democratic lines, they have independent lines.
Like, for me as a reporter, I've never done it and I would be scared to do it. For the speaker to do it, I give him props for going on C-SPAN and doing this.
It was very composed. He held his cool, in my opinion. I think
Johnson is a very composed speaker.
He's one of the
more
level-headed members of Congress, I would say. He has been getting a little feisty, though, because the shutdown as it's going, he has even said that he needs to take a breath and have a lot of Christian grace, is what he says, to be able to speak about his colleagues in a respectful way.
No, I was in a press conference last week, and he really doesn't get too flustered. I've been walking with him, asking him questions at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night after he's been up all night. And he typically he is a very composed person. He is not quick to anger, but he was starting to rant in this press conference. He took a step back and he took a breath and he was like, sorry, I'm really aggravated. And sitting in that press conference, I was like, I've never seen this side of Johnson.
No, and so he was sitting there on the calls and he was getting asked about the military pay, about military people not being paid during the shutdown. One of the Republicans even said, you know, I'm disappointed in you and disappointed in my party that you're not bringing a bill to the floor to pay the troops. And Johnson took it in stride. He said, you know, I'm very sorry. I'm very sympathetic to your situation.
You could stop this. And you could be the one that could say military's getting paid. And I think that it is awful, and the audacity of someone who makes six figures a year to do this to military families is insane.
All right, Samantha.
Samantha, I'm so sorry to hear about your situation. The reason I've been so angry this week, and they've been calling me out on media, Johnson's angry. I am angry because of situations just like yours.
And then immediately went back on message that it's Democrats who are doing this to you, not me. The CR was going to pay the troops. We don't need to bring another bill, all that kind of stuff. And one of the questions that he got, going back to Stephen Miller, was the fact that I think it was a Democratic caller, came on and said, I'm really concerned because Donald Trump is a dictator. And while all of this is going on, no one in Congress seems to have the spine to do something about it. I'm paraphrasing. And Mike Johnson just kind of sat there and listened to it. And then he said, well, President Donald Trump is not a dictator.
The other thing is that Trump is a dictator. So it doesn't matter what Johnson does or what the guy over in the Senate does. All the thing that has to happen is if Trump says open the government, it will be open tomorrow. We have to understand that. And they keep talking about we're putting names out there about Trump being the dictator and this and that. You just called, and he continues to call.
All right, Alexander.
President Trump's not a dictator. You said if he says open the government, it will open. President Trump has been calling for the government to be open since before this began. In fact, I was in the meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump and, of course, Leader Schumer, Leader Jeffries, Leader Thune, and I. And he pleaded with Chuck Schumer, don't do this, Chuck. Keep the government open. Why would you do it? We have policy disputes and debates and disagreements. We'll work on that. But we shouldn't harm the American people in the process.
I think it's just interesting that this dictatorship stuff, Republicans keep hearing it from voters. And they're hearing it from Republicans even. Sometimes it's their own people. And they just keep squashing it like, nope, it's not a thing. Nope, it's not a thing. But I think the more that we see these legal challenges happening, I think that that's when we're going to start to see if the Republicans start to hold up under that pressure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to it. I mean, we're seeing it come back and forth. We saw it with First Amendment stuff whenever the Jimmy Kimmel stuff happened. We're seeing it with Epstein files. We're seeing it with nationwide injunction in the courts. So I think that it'll be interesting to see over the next 3 years how that kind of comes up and if anyone wavers there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a wrap. Thanks for watching Capitol Conversations with Rachel and Lauren.
And as always, make sure to like and subscribe, send comments, send us questions, and as always, make sure to read at WashingtonExaminer.com.